Here's a quick disclaimer. The views, statements, and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers. The statements are not intended to be product claims or medical advice. Hi, Diana Fryc here. I'm the host of the Gooder podcast, where I get to talk with the powerhouse women in the food, beverage, and wellness categories about the business of consumer packaged goods, branding, and leadership. This episode is brought to you by Retail Voodoo. Retail Voodoo is a brand development firm providing strategic brand and design services for companies in the food, wellness, and beverage industries. Our clients include Starbucks, Kind, REI, PepsiCo, Hi-Key, and many other market leaders. So, if your goal is to crush your competition by driving growth and disrupting the marketplace with new and innovative ideas, give us a call and let's talk. Or take a quick peek at our website, retail-voodoo.com. Okay, super excited to introduce this next guest to you. You guys have eaten Holly Snyder's food and you've loved it. As a senior culinary product developer for Amazon, Holly is always thinking about what's next on America's plate. Her culinary journey took her from her artist mother's kitchen, where every meal was an occasion, to working with groundbreaking chef Jeremiah Tower at the legendary San Francisco eatery Stars. All right, through her 30-plus year career, Holly has led development and commercialization teams in consumer research, prototyping, large-scale pilots, and launch. While at Seattle startup Grace's Kitchen, woohoo, going to talk about that in a minute, she pioneered the first frozen CPG home meal replacement, recognized by Food and Wine magazine as one of their tastes to try. She's continued to develop and launch products for both startups and Fortune 500 companies, including Starbucks, Jamba, Nestle, General Mills, Jenny Craig, Delta Airlines, and more. Holly's culinary vision is inspired by her love of travel and history. She's dedicated mentor to women in the culinary industry and is proud of the kick-ass teams she has led. I love that. Welcome, Holly. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Well, thank you so much. Really nice to meet you as well. Thanks for having me on.
Yes. Yeah. And you are in Seattle, is that correct?
Correct. Yep. In my home in Seattle, which has been my home for about 20 years now. So
nice. I love that. Okay. So can I just tell you how excited I am to meet you? First of all, two reasons. My business partner, David, has shared some wonderful stories about working on the Grace's Kitchen brand, and from your innovations team to developing the whole brand in general. So that is really great. And then as I was doing my homework, I found out that you were working with my sister at SK Food Group for over 10 years. I've been in that building. It's bananas. What a small world.
I know, it's a crazy small world. Yeah, she's great, and I'm surprised that there wasn't a point where she took you back into the innovation kitchen to meet all of us.
She did.
And where was
She did. I don't know. You were drinking. I don't know. Maybe on holiday.
Probably, but yeah.
I'm not sure. I wonder if we did meet each other and it just, it wouldn't have clicked.
Yeah. Could be. Yeah. Such a small world. That's great.
It is. I know. So what is super exciting for me, aside from the small world connections, is that I get to talk to a food technologist, a food scientist, a magician, a Willy Wonka. I don't know how you describe yourself, but maybe you can tell, how do you describe yourself to people that maybe aren't familiar in the industry, and what do you get to do all day?
Yeah, it's a great question, because sometimes when you just say product developer, a lot of people don't necessarily relate that to food. Honestly, I'm a culinary problem solver, really, on a day-to-day basis. I like to call food manufacturing a pirate ship. It's it's really a hodgepodge of people that have gotten there via a lot of times the road less traveled, right? But in general, you solve problems. starting from way back in the beginning of my career, how do you get it on a truck? How long can it sit on the shelf? How hot does it need to be? Just every day is a different set of problems. I'd like to think there's secret sauce, that there's a little bit of magic. There's definitely science. There is that. But yeah, it's pretty much solving problems for customers, for consumers.
Well, I'm curious, as I did my homework, I saw that you were a telecommunications student. Now, in your bio, you talked about a kitchen. So, can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit how did you get
How
started,
did
and how
I?
did telecommunications get fit in the whole situation?
Yeah, I don't know. I think part of it was I never really thought I was going to go to college. So my parents were artists. And I
Ah.
say that in that that's how they made their living. They were self-employed artists, a sculptor and a
Mhm.
painter. So we had
Mm.
kind of an unusual childhood. My mother was impossibly talented, and that included the kitchen. I think at some point I thought I was going to be an actor. I don't know. When you're 18, you don't know what you're going to do. So that seemed to
Mhm.
be a bucket of study that made sense at the time. But unlike my sister, college was never really my focus. I think my parents said, whatever you choose to do, make sure you love it because you're going to be doing it a long time.
Mhm.
And they didn't make a lot of money, certainly as artists, but they loved what they did. And that somehow stuck
Mhm.
with me. But, it was a random series of events, from cooking with my mother, being weaned on Julia Child, um,
Mm.
using, my sister loves to tell the story of me taking, Michigan was one of the first states that had deposits on beer bottles. She would have
Oh,
a
right.
party. I would take the beer bottles, get the money, and throw a dinner party in high school. Like
Mm.
that's what. So I was a nerd. Yeah,
Wow.
I was
Oh,
like
you
I
were.
was a food nerd before I knew that was such a thing. But ended up on the West Coast, had a clothing company that went away, and kind of fell into food and realized, um, oh, this is what you're supposed to be doing. Like this
Mhm.
is where these are your people. This is the
Mhm.
pirate ship that you
This
belong
is the
on.
pirate ship.
Of you either go to the military or cooking school, right? It's like that's the type of
Mhm.
people who end up, certainly in the restaurant business. So yeah, it was a road less traveled for sure.
It was the low road less traveled.
Yeah,
Well, what you do now is a form of art, if you ask me. I mean, you have to know the science, but if anybody knows artists, uh, there's a lot of science in art,
sure.
especially if you're painting. You have to know how all of the or sculpting. I mean, all of those things require the math and
Hmm.
require all sorts of science. So,
Yep.
not surprising that you are an innovator. Artists are innovators, and you're an
Hmm.
innovator. I
Hmm.
can see that for sure. So, tell us a little bit about what the early days of your food career were, or your food development career were like.
Yeah, well, so started in the restaurant business. I kind of
Mhm.
fell into that. Loved it. And then, as one does, you slowly find other things that make sense for you. I had sort of done all
Mhm.
the things I wanted in restaurant, and thank God for recruiters, right? Who randomly call
Right?
in and say, "Hey, by the way," and there was a job at Whole Foods. I was living in San Francisco at the time, and they wanted, at the time, Whole Foods was running a lot of commissaries across the country, and this was for baking. And at that point, I had been trained as a pastry chef, and they were looking to kind of upscale what they were offering. The commissary had been in the red for quite a bit of time,
Mhm.
and they were
Mhm.
looking for someone to kind of come in, and I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Sure, I'll do that. I think,
Why not?
well, I struggle between the imposter syndrome and the
Yeah.
just say yes. Just say yes.
Mhm.
Sure, I can do
Mhm.
that. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So I spent quite a bit of time there. Ended up in the Seattle area for reasons I won't bore you with, but ended up here and then sort of went in the startup business, Grace's Kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
which I know we'll talk about, and then
Mm-hmm.
Kinetics, and then from there into really large scale manufacturing, like millions of products a day size of
Wow.
manufacturing, which is SK Food
Yeah.
Group. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there to transition to Amazon just about a year ago. So,
Oh, so this is new. I can
yeah.
imagine. Well, SK Food Group, I think externally might feel a little, for those that don't know, SK Food Group might feel like it's maybe a traditional corporate, but
Mm-hmm.
my understanding is it's very innovative. I know that there was just lots of thinking going on all the time. The environments, are in regards to the pace of work, is it similar, would you say, the two, SK versus Amazon?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Innovation uh, is something that happens during frugal times. Sometimes I
Yeah,
think the best innovation happens during frugal times.
I agree.
And it happens during the wealthy times, right? It's kind of a
Yeah.
beer and champagne sort of business, right? Um,
Yeah.
you know, so yeah, in regards to that, no different, and the problems are always the same, right? We like to think that
Yes.
different brands and different things have different problems. They don't.
Yeah.
It's all
Yeah.
about what are you going to put on a consumer's plate that they're
Yeah.
going to enjoy and they're going to buy
Yeah.
again.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you have to deal with the profitability part as well in your roles typically, or is that somebody else that does
Yeah,
that?
previous to this, definitely at SK Food Group, I wore quite a few hats beyond just
Mhm.
innovation and leading
Mm.
commercialization. There's a lot of sales that are involved, so you often get trotted out for the pony show, right?
Sure. Yep. Yep.
Because other culinary teams come in from other brands. If you're having a conversation with General Mills or Nestle or Wendy's or
Mhm.
whoever it is,
Mhm.
their culinary people are there as well, and you all are trying to
Mhm.
speak the same language, right, to move forward. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's definitely a dog and pony show that culinary people often get dragged out into to
Dragged out into.
yeah, to
Yes, well,
sort of
because you
help
guys are the
pitch it.
magicians, right?
Well,
Yeah,
we like
yeah.
to think we are, but
Mm. Oh my goodness. So is there a moment, thinking back, is there a moment where you're like, this is it? I like, how I want to say this differently. Was there a single moment where you went, this is what I want to do the rest of my life? Or at least this is what I want to do the rest of my life for right now?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, that when you're in your
Mhm.
20s, you're lucky if you
Right?
know where you're going to live next month. But
Mhm.
yeah, I have to say that I think it was my experience at Stars. So there's going to be some
Mhm.
people who know what that meant and know who
Mhm.
Jeremiah Tower was and
Mhm.
the prominence he had and the importance of that restaurant. And I'm not sure I really knew it going in. Um, but when you first start, you get the worst of all the jobs, and usually it's working the line. And in pastry, you're the
Mhm.
last one out. Everyone's drinking a beer, and you're still cleaning your station. And
Yeah.
but I remember thinking, working the line, that energy, that adrenaline, all
Mhm.
of that was like, oh yeah, this is amazing. Like this
Mhm.
family, this dysfunctional
Mhm.
family that you create, for better or worse. Um,
Mhm.
you're all in it together. Like you all are just pushing through what seems to be extraordinary circumstances every night together. And that kind of camaraderie, I think, is great. And it also then, which I realized more and more, leads you into the ability for strategic thinking
Mhm.
and design thinking. If
Mhm.
I do this and this way, what happens? If I do it that way, what happens? You
Mhm.
start to learn
Mhm.
those things when you're up against the
Mhm.
wire on time. If you're not organized on a fast-paced line, you drowned. And there is nothing
Mhm.
worse than that. There's everything you want to do to crawl your way back out of that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Exactly.
I think that was it, and people like Julia Child came in and got to meet her. You
You
know,
did not.
yes, Mikhail Baryshnikov,
Oh my
Liza
goodness.
Minnelli. I mean, it literally was a starstruck restaurant, and so
Mm,
that for my first time at the rodeo, it was pretty cool.
that's pretty
Yeah, it
great.
was pretty cool, and I knew what a special experience that was, and so I soaked it up. You know, I did whatever I could to help open a restaurant in Napa, help run the bakery, help run the
Mm,
store, like whatever it was I could do, I said yes.
mhm,
And so, yeah, it was a
mm.
great experience. Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
And I'm assuming I dated somebody who was a journeyman baker,
I'm
and,
sorry.
I always felt I know. Jeez, 2 a.m. wake up call, no joke.
Hmm.
But I think anybody that works on the baking side has the longest days because you have so much upfront prep work, and then you have to wait, and then there's so much on the back end as well. So I'm assuming
Yeah.
that, you're saying at the end of the day, you were probably in there opening things or one of the first in there, I'm sure.
Yes, there can be those types of hours as well, where you're eventually, as you rise up the ladder and actually become the pastry chef, then you get to boss other
Mhm.
people around, and as we say, you get to be a clipboard chef where you're just walking around checking the box.
Yep.
But
Yep.
until then, you're earning your keep. So
Yeah.
yeah, the hours can be great, but the thing is too, it's interesting because it's usually the position that gets the least amount of respect and honestly has
Yeah.
the most amount of science and chemistry
Yes. Yeah.
involved. Everyone else
Yeah.
is winging it on the risotto, and you're there trying to scale up X amount of
Right.
whatever it
Yeah.
is, right? And figure out why
Yeah.
the souffle fell or the cake didn't do this
Right.
or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. So
Yeah.
I don't think pastry chefs really get their just desserts.
No, I don't think so either. Ha ha, I like that dad joke. Uh, but I will say that you're right. I mean, they're not necessarily winging it on the risotto, but there's a
Yeah.
whole lot of subjectivity that goes on in
Yes.
there. You have a
Yes.
lot of creative license, and while you do have that somewhat in baking, it could be anything from the humidity that day to the bag of flour that came in the door. You
Absolutely.
guys struggle with a lot of conditions that it will make or break a product.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
can complete respect. And, listen, I have never had better bread in my life than when I was with a journeyman baker.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
bet.
best bread on the planet out of the oven whenever we wanted. It is something magical that those of you that have not experienced that, you're missing something. You're
Mhm.
missing something. I
Mhm.
digress. I'm having a
It's
bread
okay, it's okay,
moment.
you can have a moment. Yeah. Mhm.
Right now, I'm more of a butter person, though. Like, I
Oh,
always tell
yeah.
people, I need a little bread with my butter, and I've become
Yeah.
I've told somebody, what did I say recently? I said, "What is this world coming to where I have become a butter aficionado, and I will not eat certain butter on my bread because,
It's the world I
if
wanna
you've
be
had."
part of. What That's a
Yes,
great
right.
world. Yeah. What's wrong with that world? I mean,
I
that's
know, but it seems so weird and
no.
bougie.
It's totally bougie and it's perfect. Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, great.
don't
We
tamp that down. That's great.
All right, I know what we're doing next. We're gonna
Yeah.
go have a butter tour. That's what we're doing. We're going to
Exactly.
France. We're having a butter tour. Okay.
Totally. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, now on the flip side, I always think that as many of the great things that happen in our careers that shape us and make us who we are, there's always those moments where I'll call it your oh shit moment. It could be a failed business, a failed relationship, or maybe not even something quite as
Yeah.
catastrophic as that. But
Yeah.
is there a moment that happened during your career that kind of changed the trajectory, maybe in a way that you were grateful for afterwards, but in the moment was kind of a oh shit moment?
Yeah, I mean, at times I feel pretty lucky, though.
Mhm.
I've also been told luck had nothing to do with it, that,
Mm.
you work hard and you get what you
Yep.
get, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I have to say, it was during the whole what was that, 2008,
Oh,
whatever, the
2008.
housing
Yep.
crisis.
Yeah.
So I was
Yeah.
working for another startup, Kinetics, that was in sports nutrition. So I was developing a lot of CPG products that were high
Yeah.
protein cereal and bars and a lot of things
Mm.
like that.
Mhm.
And my partner and I were living in a flat just a few blocks from
Mhm.
here. And
Mhm.
unbeknownst to us, the landlords had been foreclosed on. And we
Oh,
found out
no.
as they were kind of packing their bags and running out the back door.
Oh my
At
gosh.
the same time, the startup was in trouble and people were being laid off.
Mhm.
My hours were reduced, so I became a
Mhm.
part-time person. And that was a little, that was definitely the moment, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
we're not going to have a home to live in. You now are making half the salary you did. What are you going to do now, right? And
Yeah.
and I think at
Yeah.
that point my epiphany was, startups have been great. I've learned a lot, but I think I want stock options and a 401k plan, right? I was
Yeah.
like,
Preach. Mhm. Mhm.
what am I going to do now that might be the thing that I stay at for a while? And I'm kind of a weird
Yeah.
person that I've stayed at a lot of my jobs. In the food
Mhm.
business, people switch around often every 2 years, and
Mhm.
I'm a
Mhm.
little more of a 6 to 7 to 8 year person before I move. I
Gotcha.
like to really drain it of everything it's got before I move on. So I think that was a really scary time, but also a time where that's when I made the move to SK, and that was
Mhm.
where I cut my teeth on um, what large CPG brands were doing, how they looked at consumers, what information was there,
Mm.
what information they thought was there that wasn't there, right? Like a lot of
Mhm.
things that they're just winging it and thinking that that's what people are going to take. What really
Mhm.
large scale production looked like. It's one thing to be in someone else's factory and see them make the bars or the chips or the whatever it is. It's different when it's your plant, um,
Yeah.
and you're there with a customer next to you and you're making sure everything is exactly the way they want it. You learn about you kind of have to learn about everything. You have to understand packaging. You have to understand the difference between flow wrap and modified atmosphere and what a cartoner does and all the things, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
so that was turned out to be a great move. It really turned out to be
Yeah.
the move that um, kind of was a culmination of the creative parts of what I'd learned,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
strategic thinking that I'd learned, the
Mhm.
how to move through complex problems in a way that um, makes sense, how to be
Mhm.
nimble, how to be frugal, all of those
Mhm.
things kind of compounded with that
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
So yeah, turned out to be a great move. It turned out to be a great
That
thing.
is
At the time, you don't think so, right? Because you're terrified. But
right. Yeah, the whole "who moved my cheese" gets real
right,
in that moment, right? Mhm.
absolutely, absolutely,
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I 2008 was a very crazy year. The marketing industry and the design industry are kind of pre-indicators of what's happening in the marketplace, and
Mm,
I remember when David and I were doing our doing our we were doing our business, and I had been on a trip and I had come back from the trip, and it there was nobody returning phone calls and there
mm,
was nobody returning emails. It got really weird on the summer of 2008, and we thought, oh, it's just a blip, because we'd never seen anything like that before. And then of course November happened, and the shit hit the fan, quite
yeah,
frankly, and
yeah.
all of a sudden we got really inventive in lots of ways on the home front, on the business front. Uh, but I think those of us that lived through it, whether somebody like you that ended up going on the corporate side, or even David and I, there's a little bit. We call it a financial crisis PTSD, and it's not meant to diminish physical PTSD or
Yeah.
mental PTSD in any way, shape, or form. But I'll tell you, anytime the market gets a little bit of squidgy, we start going, here it goes. All right, it's all going to fall apart.
Well, sure. Look at
Um,
COVID, right? I mean, it was sort of
yeah.
the same situation. I was making like turkey sandwiches for a possible school lunch program on my dining room table, right? I mean, it was
Oh
sort of the
my
same
goodness.
thing,
Mm-hmm.
different, right?
Different.
Yeah,
Different. Yeah. I would, from a job perspective, things probably ramped up for you at that time, because I know innovation went bananas in that moment. Everybody that was a restaurant had to pivot and start
yeah,
making things. There was a
yeah.
lot of
Just
amazing
glad
things
I
that
was
came
not
out
in
of
the
there.
restaurant business then. Oof.
Oh,
That was
yeah,
that
that would
that
have
was
been.
rough. No, we did. I mean, at the time, yeah, I was with SK at the time, and
Hmm.
so again, the school lunch program. There's another thing that's close to my heart which is
Hmm.
most people who are in the food business is food insecurity. So all of a sudden,
Right.
there's a bunch of kids who normally would get school lunch program or after school lunch
Yep.
program, and there's nothing, right?
There's nothing.
So we really spun quickly and created a bunch of sandwiches for school lunch program, which seems, like, well, that's easy. And honestly, it's not, because they don't put a lot of money into the school lunch program, as you
No.
probably know. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, there was a lot of work to be done there for sure.
Was that you personally doing that, or was that SK?
That was SK. No, that was
Oh my
SK.
goodness.
Yeah. No, that was
I did
SK.
not know that. Yeah, I
Truckloads
know that was a
of
big deal.
truckloads of school lunch program sandwiches and things
Yeah.
for kids.
And
Yeah.
that pivot was really fast. I remember, I don't think it was more
Absolutely.
than a week
Oh no.
before, like,
When I say I had like turkey sandwiches lined up on my dining room table, I did, taking pictures
did
for
you?
specs, weighing things, like doing
Yes.
everything we could to figure out, how to get it to happen quickly. So,
Oh my, and who better, like a commissary style organization that
oh
has
yeah.
the infrastructure
Oh
to be
yeah.
able to do that? Fantastic. And
Yeah.
keep all those people employed. You probably even had temporary workers come on
Yes.
board for.
Yes. They did
That's
an amazing they
amazing.
did an amazing job at SK on that for sure.
Oh, was
Yeah.
my sister part of that?
I'm sure she was.
Oh my goodness. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go give her a hug. She
She would have
so
had to
undersells
figure
herself.
yeah, she would have had to figure out a lot of the transportation and stuff for that, which was
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for sure.
She Oh, that
Yeah.
turkey. All
Yeah.
right, now I know it. Okay, great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about
Yeah.
you now. So, looking back, I want to talk about Grace's Kitchen a
Mhm.
little bit.
Yeah.
Right now, people, I mean, there's a lot of frozen, fresh to go. I mean, the whole grab and go or easy meal making has
Mhm.
really erupted. Particularly, COVID made that exponential. But at the time of Grace's Kitchen, just a high level, what was Grace's Kitchen? What made it special?
Yeah.
Because it was different than a Hungry Man dinner. It was something completely
Yeah,
different.
we were so before our time. I think
Yeah.
about that was a great Grace's was a great experience, and working with David was such a great experience. Yeah,
Mm.
we started as some people might remember the cook and carry business, where people would come in, cook meals, and take them home, which is
Yeah.
weird. I've never quite understood that. I think really quickly we discovered that in Seattle, usually both people in the family are working. So there was
Mhm.
not this like mom who was going to go spend 4 hours putting a bunch of meals together. So people started to say, hey, can you just pack some stuff up and take it? And we're like, yeah, we can do that. So started to pouch some things, put it in a
Mhm.
little, it's called a biopack. It's what you get a chicken
Mhm.
dinner in, right? Start to sell it out of the front. And then a local grocery store came over and said, "Oh, well, can we buy that?" And then it just sort of blew up till
Yeah.
we realized, like, oh, this is a thing.
This is a
So I
thing.
just started to put together, they were meals for two. They were frozen, which is the big problem with home meal replacement, is there's a huge amount of shrink in that
Yeah.
area, right? Huge amount of
Yeah,
shrink for
right.
the grocery store, for the
Mhm.
consumer. Like, it's just,
Mhm.
it's a hard, and the subscription business is a miserable business to be in.
Yeah,
Like Blue
you're the margins
Apron
are
or
pennies.
yeah,
Yeah.
people do it for a month and then they're done.
Yeah.
So frozen seemed to be like kind of a genius answer. So there was a sauce, there were sides that were cooked. The only thing that wasn't cooked was the meat, because frozen reheated meat is never delicious. So, and it
Mhm.
made you feel like you were cooking. So if the meal had pork chops and a caper sauce, you were, excuse me, you were cooking
Yeah.
that pork. So it was pretty revolutionary at the time.
Yeah. I think it was date night food kind of
Mm-hmm.
positioning, is if I remember correctly. When David and I were first working together and first uh well, we were dating before we started working together, of course. And he was so proud of it. Grace's Kitchen was still a company. I think you had not been acquired for the sauces, if I remember, is how it kind of went down in the end. Um, and then he had some of these at home, and they were so good. I was like,
Yeah,
what is this?
yeah.
What is this magic? It was so fantastic.
Yeah, it really, it was pretty interesting. I mean, we ended up doing private label for Target under the Archer
Did
Farms.
you? Did
We
you?
did a Kirkland meal for Costco, a steak and Fryc kind of steak dinner meal. We were national, like it was huge, and it was a
Yeah.
good price point. I think it was between $12.99 for like a vegetarian meal
Mhm.
to $15.99 for something maybe a little more meat centric. Um,
Yeah.
I was able to keep the USDA out of our plant because I had the USDA, I had other co-mans package the meat
Oh.
for, I was very tricky. I had other people
Mm.
package the meat and label it and bug it,
Mhm.
and then we just dropped it into a box.
Smart.
Yeah, we were very scrappy. So, I think, and the other thing is, I wish you had a picture of the box, but
Oh,
David
yes.
did such a great job in um, designing a box that also looked so different on the shelf. Because, like you say,
It sure did.
you're in the planogram with the hungry man and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff, and here was this super sexy, like really great looking food. We worked with a lot of great food stylists and photographers.
Mhm. Mhm.
um, the layout on the back showing you all the ingredients. The box
Exactly.
itself was also really revolutionary.
Mhm.
So the whole thing was pretty amazing. But as
Yeah.
all things happen, sometimes investors believe, who are used to investing in non-food things, that you make money a lot quicker than you do in the food business. So I think
Yeah.
they just kind of got weary of the length of time it was taking to really turn a
I
profit.
see. Oh, really?
So I kind of I sort of saw the writing on the wall, and
Mhm.
kind of moved away. And I know they went to
Mhm.
a trade show after that, but
Mhm.
and then slowly, yeah, just kind of disappeared. So, but
They disappeared. Yeah, what I heard, and I don't know if this is accurate, but they sold the company to somebody that wanted the sauce recipes because, well, I'll tell you those sauces were legit, but I don't know if
yeah,
that's real or not.
yeah, I have not heard that. I don't, yeah, but who knows? Yeah,
Yeah, it's okay.
who knows? Yeah,
Well, so moving on from there,
yeah.
those of you, I'll put on the on my channel the Grace's Kitchen images when this goes live so
Yeah.
that people can see what it I would say even still is revolutionary for what I'm seeing in the freezer case. The price point would of course be that much more because you're talking about premium products, but even when you're talking about the quality of the products and the price per meal is still low compared to what you would
Totally.
go getting
Yeah.
out, and that what you get was so great. There's still nothing in the market that really is comparable in the freezer. There really isn't.
No, I'd
And there
agree.
might be time for a new one. Might be
You
time for a
never
new one,
know. I
Holly.
did some desserts for a while too. I remember people were pretty excited about a black pepper pineapple upside down
Ooh,
cake.
oh
People
my
still talk to
goodness.
me about that. Yeah, like, do you remember that? I'm
Oh,
like, yes, it was delicious. So,
yes, yes, I
yeah,
do.
kind of a bake your own cake thing was also sort of
Ooh,
a fun thing. But yeah,
yeah. Well, when you're thinking, when you have an opportunity to talk to other folks in the industry, people that are interested in doing a similar type
Hmm.
of role as you, this innovation, what kind of advice do you find yourself giving to people?
And that doesn't include run for your life.
No, that could be number one if you.
Yeah. Um, be curious. I mean,
Mm,
it's what I'd probably tell anybody. Be curious, say yes, and especially if you're a woman, um, food manufacturing is still, as most manufacturing is, widgets, car, whatever it is, still a very male-driven field.
mm,
I can't
okay.
tell you the amount of times I've been the only woman at a table of 12 men, all talking
Mm,
about sports, and
mm,
me saying, I thought we were in the food business, but
yeah.
get a seat at the table and
Mm.
take up space. You
Oh,
know, don't just sit at the table and then be quiet.
yeah.
Sit at the table,
Yeah.
get a seat at the table, and take up some space
Take up space.
and ask good questions. Like, you know, think about it, ask good questions. You don't have to ask a lot of questions,
Yeah.
but ask good questions so that people remember you. Um, it is hard. It is hard to be female in manufacturing. It
Yeah.
is. And typically you find us more in the innovation than in other,
Mhm.
but that's changing. And
Mhm.
at SK previously, there were quite a few women who were starting to come up the ranks
I
of
love that.
leadership there, you know, for sure.
Good.
But yeah, get a seat at the table for sure.
I love that. And I think that I don't know if this is accurate, but I'm going to make an assessment that we could use far more diversity on the innovations front as well to kind of develop those recipes for a much larger audience. I don't know if that's accurate, but at least that's what I'm seeing.
I would totally agree. I would totally agree. The world is
Mm-hmm.
changing, and
Mm-hmm.
consumers, even though I think in general, you know, there's certain things that consumers will still buy regardless of what we'd like
Yeah.
them to buy or hope they will
Yeah.
buy. We have to realize that there is a lot more out there than what we'd like to believe. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think diversity is key to any business, but
Key to
absolutely,
any.
yeah, for
Oh
sure.
my goodness. Holly, I am really enjoying this conversation. Our time's always is almost up, but I have one last question that I'd like to ask absolutely everybody, and that is kind of a total non sequitur. Uh, are there any are there any other women leaders or rising stars out there in our industry or not that you would like to elevate for the work that they're doing right now?
Yeah, they don't need my help. I'll say that. I don't think they're rising stars. Again, I go back to what it is to feed people.
Mhm.
And I don't take that lightly. And the
Mhm.
people who work in those fields, and Claire Fontenoy from Feeding America, CEO of Feeding
Mhm.
America. She's there.
Mhm.
I wish Jose Andres was a woman because honestly, I'd say Jose Andres because
Oh, that's
what
all right.
what
Totally
because what
fine.
he is doing to feed
Oh, right.
people is
Exactly.
stunning and humbling and I look at that in awe. Lisa Moon from Global Food Bank, giant
Oh.
food bank network, just the people who have decided to spend their time to help with food insecurity. I think those are
Mm-hmm.
people who always should be championed. They're paid. Most of them are paid well, but it's
Yeah.
still it's still something that I think is an amazing job, something that
Yeah.
should be
Well,
championed. So
yeah. Jose, that's Jose's operation is so reminds me a little bit of Disneyland. I'd love to be
yeah,
in that back team and watch the magic that makes that machine go, hey?
yeah. I mean, there's a person who, could have very easily rested on laurels,
Totally.
lived with his feet up on the beach, and
Absolutely.
has decided to do everything he can for good. And um, it's all those people who do that. I think
Yeah.
it's important. So
Servant's heart for sure. Yeah.
absolutely, yeah,
Well, we have been talking with Holly Snyder, Senior Culinary Development. I'm sorry, you are Senior Culinary Product Developer at Amazon. Is there any place that you could point people to kind of show off a little bit of what you've been doing? Maybe your LinkedIn profile, or do you have a portfolio somewhere?
yeah. No, I think LinkedIn is probably the best. And yeah, I do have products that I've worked on my LinkedIn page, including the great products from Grace's Kitchen. So yeah, LinkedIn
Yeah.
is a great place to connect for sure.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for your time
Yeah.
today, Holly. I'm so happy to have met you.
Thank you,
Feel like we should
Diana.
have met each
Yeah.
other before.
I know. Well, there you go. No, thank you so much for having me as a
Yeah.
guest. Really
Of
appreciate it.
course. Yes. And thank you, listeners, for your time today. Hey, listen, if you like this episode, please share it with a friend. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time on the Gooder Podcast.
Produced by Heartcast Media.